Hey, let's get right into it. All right, that was book one. Fuck, man. Big, huge explosion, lots of shooting, another explosion, bad guys get away. Some fucked up shit. So now, forming the party, we find out how the adventure gets going. Aiden would go on and on about the hero's journey, but Aiden's a co-host over a Good Idea podcast and also Shattered Worlds RPG. Aiden Kinsella, president of Sinister Parent Company. Always going on and on about the hero's journey. So, book two, Forming the Party, chapter one. Who are you? Ayanna asked him, her eyes narrow with suspicion. Joran sighed, flexing and unflexing his sore muscles. He'd been nervously fiddling with a screwdriver after tinkering with the zone catcher. Joran Barlow, I'm a bounty hunter. I was sent to find Creel and take him back to Calustria. He sighed again. I didn't anticipate him going nuclear. Ayanna pressed her fingers into her temples, rubbing them in a vain attempt to soothe her raging headache. Chief Hitaki had given her some painkillers, but she didn't love how they affected her concentration. How could you? Only a lunatic would start a war to kill one man. Joran slid the screwdriver back into his toolkit and slid it into a vest pocket. He leaned back against the soft chair and breathed deeply. I thought the same thing. I guess he's finally jumped to the black, if he hasn't been there this whole time. Sopher slid over to the table. As he did so, he brought with him a calming memory, the lights of Innis Swamp piercing the morning dark across the waters of Lys. He felt the hero's heart soften just a touch. He drifted down and sat quietly. You reckon correctly, bounty hunter. Knassis's journey has been one of catastrophic leaps forward into darkness. Where once he knew only love, now he knows only hatred. He is the worst sort of monster, one that delights in chaos and pain. And I fear it is our fault. His eyes moistened with invisible tears, as they often did when speaking of the failures of his tribe. Ayanna studied the Mistral's face, pondering the words. Most Mistral are non-violent. How did he become a killer? Sophus breathed deeply, closing his eyes against dark memory. As he told the story, he wove images and sounds into it, in the manner of the ancient soul singers. It was the third year of the collapse. The Council Fathers called the dreamers to return to the homeworld, to return to the sleeping cities and shut out the outside worlds. Knassis refused, becoming the first Mistral in many years to refuse an order from the High Council. The reason for this was not known. Some say young Knassis, I have to fix that, he's talking right now in his reality, whatever. First to refuse an order from the High Council. The reason for this is not known. Some say young Knassis had fallen in love with a non-Mistral and chose not to answer the call. Whatever the reason, Knassis eluded the returners and drifted into mystery. Sometime later, it is said he took his first life. She was a young Lunari, as beautiful as Fatima and as regal as Helene. Her name was Adrina Telemachus, heir to the Joubert family fortune. Was she his love, the reason for his refusal? It is not known. What is known is what happened next. The Jouberts contracted the Shadowin to bring him to justice. He eluded their capture, enlisting the aid of a terror cult known as the Brothers of Pain to keep him safe. In return for their protection, he began his dark occupation, slaying their enemies and building up a veil of hatred that further hid him from return. Joran grunted, annoyed. Every scumbag killer had a similar tale. The authorities pinned them on a trumped-up charge, they fell in with the wrong crowd while on the run, and the rest was history. God forbid they just admit they were selfish, cowardly assholes who enjoyed the smell of blood and money. Joran rose creakily to his feet and shoved the disc into his pack. Sophros looked at him quizzically. You are not convinced. Every asshole with a gun thinks he was treated unfairly. This piece of shit wove a nice little tale, and you all bought it, because your kind think Mistral are born good and have to be twisted into evil. The only reason more Mistral don't kill is because they spend all their time chewing gum and whittling flutes in their fancy little tree forts. This jagoff got a taste for blood early, and it went on from there. Same old shit, different day. He picked up his rifle and shouldered it, waving to one of the acolytes to unlock the door. Aeona rose to her feet, glaring sternly. You can't leave. It isn't safe. Joran sniffed. Gods, she was something. Her presence was even more shocking in person. And she was as haughty as any noble woman of Calustria he'd ever met, save one. I'll take my chances. Joran don't give a fuck. Chapter 2. She's right. You go out that door, you're guaranteed to take a bullet. Chief Hitaki was a broken mess, but he could still silence a room with his gravelly voice. Joran studied the old cop's face. Hitaki resumed. Every person in this room is a target. Creel and the Gulls started a war today, and it's still going on right outside that door. Think about it. I'm the head cop on this entire base, and my head's on the chopping block. You think you're any safer? He limped over to the large vid screen and slumped against a pillar. My best detective betrayed all of us. Why? Money? I don't think so. He tapped the screen a few times, cycling through pictures of Frentz, chairman of the SSC on Antares. Look at this. Frentz sold out all of us, hired tons of dirty cops, dozens of goons to wipe out the unions, even corrupted the media corps to prepare for this monstrosity. More scenes of violence unfolded, spanning all the base's many levels. So ask yourselves, why would the SSC let this happen? Joran couldn't think of a reason. The unions were a problem, clearly, but one the corporation could handle, and was handling. The outcome of this attack was total chaos, pitting ordinary citizens against security officers, threatening to shut down every sector of the economy. They didn't. Frentz is on his own. Everyone in the safe house turned to see Grundle speak. His voice was low, creaky, and broken. Every muscle in his bandaged body shuddered as he talked. Hitaki nodded. Exactly. He knows the corporation can't afford to mount an effective response. Perhaps they could catch Creel. Perhaps they could even capture the masterminds of this operation. But they can't make an insertion without Fritz's say-so. He's got them by the balls. Joran was stunned. Antares was a big deal. If the Conclave were to lose it, they'd lose tons of fuel overnight. If they wanted to keep their ships flying anywhere in the sector, they'd have to let Fritz do what he wants. Their only play would be to depose him, or blow up every person on the base, which would most likely result in the mines being wiped out, rendering the base useless for everyone. So it's a mutiny. He cracks down on rioters, pins the bombing on some anarchists, tightens controls, fills the ranks with loyal criminals. Classic despot moves. But then what? He has to know it can't last forever. Eventually, the Senate will find a way to take back the base, and he's up shit creek. Ayana nodded. Unless he has an ally, a competing trade partner. The group fell silent as the truth of that sank in. Hitaki tapped the screen once more. 11 faces appeared, each more menacing than the last. Several voices gasped. The Ascendancy. This was their first move, and odds are it won't be their last. What? Conspiracy, y'all. That's what's up. Chapter 3. Celine, you have a minute? Joran had changed into a clean set of clothing, his combat gear stashed away in his bag, a pair of glasses on his face, puffing away on a stubby cigarillo. Sophus crinkled his nose and ceased his meditations. He gestured to the closest chair. Joran sat down. How may I be of service? Sophus was certain Joran would pump him for information about Creel. You know this guy. Why would he help these people? It was the same question Sophus had been asking himself. He sighed heavily. I have pondered this carefully. It is my opinion that he has been offered something no other force could or would provide. Joran tugged on his mustache, eyes narrowing in concentration. The Ifrit have always sought to dominate. Their race is plagued by paranoia about the others destroying them and taking their territory. From the very first days of the rending, they have strived to throw off their constraints and punish their perceived enemies. Early in their development, the Mistral were employed as teachers, guides, and secret bulwarks against their venal natures. We were prized for our ability to soothe their violent tendencies and direct their efforts toward productive activity. Once they learned of our manipulations, they began to hate us. That hatred has never left their minds. As you know, in the years following the collapse, they were among the cruelest violators of peace and did not hesitate to murder our brethren. I surmise that they have offered Canassus license to capture our world and subjugate, if not eliminate, our entire species. The group was silent as they considered that dark prediction. Grundle limped his way to the table with Ayana's assistance. Well then, I guess we better stop him. He turned his enormous face to meet Joran's. Have you a vessel, bounty hunter? Joran looked around the room, chewing the end of his cigar like a stick of gum. I'm working on it. Hell yeah. So that's forming the party. We'll be moving on to the next bit called Leaving the Rock. I'll give it a little taste here. The safe house had 3 exits, but only one was large enough for Grundle. The plan was fairly simple. Joran and Ayana would requisition a refrigerated truck, ostensibly to provide meat and produce for the temple. The driver and 2 guards would be members of the ship's crew, a Zentradi navigator, a Gillamorian engineer, and a Yafriti weapons expert named Faline Faerun. Faline exited the vehicle, threw open the side door, and passed several large boxes to Aeon's acolytes. Wow. Yeah. No. So, hey, I'm Jeff Richardson, El Jefe Tacoma, all over Facebook. Listen to all my shows. Everything is awesome. Shattered Worlds RPG. Good idea. The Wharf of the Tower. Something Wonderful Right Away. Some other stuff I can't remember right now. But yeah, thank you. You guys are great. Share your work and all that stuff with me. Anything you want me to read or talk about. Everything is awesome podcast at gmail.com and on Twitter at EIA podcast. So that'll do it for me here now. Take care, y'all. Bye. That was weird. Bye.